speaker has a time limit, and we absolutely want to hear everything she has to say and have a period of questions. So welcome to our first, after the summer, PCAC general meeting. Can we have an approval of the minutes that you received by email? Any changes or additions? All right, terrific. How about today's agenda? Approval of that? Wonderful.
Does anybody need hard copies of anything?
No, I got it on my laptop.
Copies, paper copies.
Back there would like one.
Yep. Yes, I just sent, I'll give that.
So let me give an introduction of our esteemed speaker today. We are fortunate to have the MTA's new Inspector General, Carolyn Picorni, with us. She's a lifelong New Yorker and uses public transportation. She began her career as a federal prosecutor in the Brooklyn U.S. Attorney's Office, where she headed the office's narcotics and money laundering program. There she devised a national strategy for charging the leaders of Mexico's most powerful cocaine cartels, including the famous El Chapo Guzman, and led the international investigation that resulted in the conviction of over 30 leaders of Colombia's Norte Valle cartel on charges of murder, operating a continuing criminal enterprise, money laundering, and drug trafficking, to say a few. Because of her work on that case, she received the Attorney General's Award for Distinguished Service and the Federal Drug Agents Foundation True American Hero Award. Ms. Picorni eventually became the office's senior litigation counsel for public integrity. In 2011, she joined U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch's executive team as Deputy Chief of the Criminal Division, overseeing over 100 criminal AUSAs in all areas, including fraud and corruption. In 2015, when President Obama tapped Loretta Lynch to be his Attorney General, Ms. Picorni served as her Deputy Chief of Staff and Counselor. She has recently served as Special Counsel for Public Integrity in the Executive Chamber and Chief Special Counsel for Ethics, Risk, and Compliance for New York State. Ms. Picorni is a graduate of New York University and Brooklyn Law School. She served as a law clerk for the Honorable Arthur D. Spat of the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of New York and as an Assistant Attorney General in the Bronx. And just to give you an idea of some of the things Ms. Picorni has uncovered recently, she did a report on the high level of escalator failures on the 2nd Avenue subway, which many of us have experienced and are quite familiar with. She found a Bridges and Tunnel employee was improperly using an Easy Pass and was actually using it as a part-time Uber driver. I mean, some incredible stuff. She did a study on non-employees' access passes and how they were being used. She uncovered thefts by a Metro North employee at the Croton Harmon complex, some of which was as small as toilet paper. She has done a study of alcohol and drug testing of employees and when and where it is done and when and where it should be done to prevent misuse of vehicles by an employee who's under the influence. So she is really doing a lot of great stuff. She's uncovering waste. We want her to uncover waste and fraud wherever it exists because that is costing the MTA money. We want things to be done prior to service cuts. So if there's ways that we can get money for the MTA, we want to do it. So without further ado, she's moved. She's here now. Inspector General Picorni.
Thank you so much. That was such a generous, lovely introduction. I had to move in a little closer so I could savor every moment of it. Thank you so much, and thank you, Lisa, for inviting me and for your service on this board. As you heard, I am a native New Yorker and a lifetime user of public transit, and you heard that before joining the Inspector General's office, I was a career federal prosecutor and most recently oversaw the statewide system for ethics, risk, and compliance. I am so delighted and honored to be with this group. The work that you do on behalf of riders and commuters is simply invaluable and it's outstanding. I've truly enjoyed hearing from your organization, including several in this room and at this table. And Lisa, I particularly look forward to your important remarks at the board meetings. That's very important. For those of you who are not familiar with the Office of the MTA Inspector General, we've been around since 1983, although, interesting fact, I happen to be the first female Inspector General to lead that office. Our responsibility is to conduct audits to help make sure that the MTA operates as efficiently as possible. We also recommend remedial actions, and we can monitor their implementation. And we also investigate instances of waste, fraud, and abuse. And we work closely with different law enforcement partners, both on the local, state, and federal level, so that when we uncover criminal activity, we can help ensure that it gets prosecuted where that's appropriate. And I can think of no better use for my time and my talent than as your MTA Inspector General. The riders and the taxpayers and commuters deserve an IG with a very serious compliance attitude, who has experience, integrity, and independence to make sure that their interests are being looked out for. And as you heard in the introduction, this is extremely personal to me. I am a lifetime user of public transit. I'm a daily user. I mean that literally. And I remember as a college student in New York City in the 1980s, taking the public transportation at certain times of the evening was a dangerous prospect. The rule of thumb was you couldn't, as a young, certainly a young female student, feel with safety that you could ride the subways after a certain hour, and that continued well into the 1990s. We have come a very long way since those days, and I'm eager to make sure that the Office of the MTA Inspector General plays a very important role in this critical moment for the MTA. We want to be a force in bringing about positive change for the riders and taxpayers. One of my top priorities is to bring in a new era of transparency for the public and also for the board. For the first time in the history of my office, we are now posting all of our reports and our investigations online and simultaneously giving them to the board more or less in real time. And already my office is now up to date with posting on our website and on our brand new social media platforms all of the audits and the investigations that my office has done this year in 2019, as well as our past reports from 18 and 17. And more to come. We're going to be posting the reports and the investigations from 2016 and beyond. And now, for the first time, we are alerting the members of the public about our work in real time via social media. So I know I am shamelessly plugging that, but I encourage all of you to follow us on Twitter and on Instagram, and you will be able to learn about our work as soon as we put them out now. In my first few months as IG, we've been actively working on a number of key projects to help improve the MTA's ability to provide a safe, clean, timely, and effective service to the riders and the commuters. And I want to give you a few examples of what we've recently completed and what's ahead for us. In terms of drains and cleaning of drains, at the MTA board meeting in June, I spoke about drain cleaning. It's a very important issue. We need to keep the drains clean because water is dangerous. It's bad for equipment. It can spark fires, lead to delays and worse. And the bottom line is that keeping drains cleaned is absolutely vital. And over a decade ago, in 2006, my office did a very important and excellent report on what caused massive service outages and flooding after a rainstorm that had happened in 2004. And my office's 2006 report found two things contributed to the flood. One was clogged drains that hadn't been regularly cleaned out for years, and also trash, litter, and the like accumulating on the tracks. And in that 2006 report, we recommended that the MTA develop systems to regularly inspect, clean, and maintain these drains in the station. Yet over the summer, when I visited New York City Transit employees who were cleaning out drains on the number 1 track near 96th Street on the Upper West Side, it was really shocking to see how badly clogged these drains had gotten over the years. There were several feet, and that's feet of mud, litter, and gunk in these drains. And the team that was cleaning out the drains that night, they were MTA employees. They were not sure when the last time this kind of cleaning of the drains had happened. So my hat's off to the workers. It was utterly back-breaking, very, very difficult work. They were doing this at 1 o'clock in the morning. They had amazing attitudes. They were very dedicated to getting these drains clean. But my office will be asking questions about why this cleaning hadn't been done for years, why my office's recommendations weren't followed, and what were the management systems in place to ensure that there was regular maintenance of these drains. And these are some of the questions that we're now asking, and I very much appreciate the MTA's cooperation in helping us assess this, and I know that they have pledged that they will have a good plan for keeping these drains cleaned going forward. But it's illustrative of the fact that we have to look at past reports, follow up on them, and this is another reason why it's so important to make our work public and be transparent about it and have it available online so that folks like those on this board can ask similar questions. Additionally, my team and I visited late-night deep cleaning of subway stations as well as subway cars. This isn't just a quality of life issue. It is vital from keeping debris and litter off the tracks for the reasons that I just mentioned. It's also a public health issue. We saw cleaners who were clearing out dust and debris from stations that seem to have accumulated over the course of decades, mold and the like, and it can't be good for anybody's health to breathe in that sort of stuff. And so where my office can be helpful in ensuring that we have clean cars, trains, and stations for riders, we want to be as helpful as possible. In speaking with a couple of you before this meeting, we talked about escalator outages. I know that's an issue of great concern to this board and to the public. My office did look at frequent escalator outages along the 2nd Avenue subway lines that, as you know, opened fairly recently. This is my own personal line that I ride in my commute, so I understand riders' frustrations very well when there are escalator outages. And some of these stations also don't have elevators, so it's, of course, one issue just asking riders to walk up and down escalators that are not working. But as you all know too well, it can be an absolute barrier for some folks who are not able to ascend and descend stairways. So very serious issue. My office conducted an audit and we released a detailed report with the findings, which identified areas of concern with one of the contractors who was responsible for maintaining those escalators. It happens to be the same contractor that's installing the escalators on the East Side Access Project. And we notified the MTA that this contractor has to be held to a much higher standard of performance. And I'm very pleased that New York City Transit has agreed with our recommendations. And my staff has been working with New York City Transit on the vendor responsibility hearings. And we hope to see real improvement in service soon. In terms of ongoing matters, while I can't discuss most of our ongoing audits and investigations with you until they're complete, there are a number of issues we're currently looking at that I can talk about today. One is falling debris. All too often we hear reports of some piece of steel, some object falling from elevated tracks. I know it's a concern to you, it's a concern to the MTA and certainly to my office. A few weeks ago, I visited Broadway Junction to inspect the elevated subway tracks. It's an issue that my office has looked at a number of times over the years. The causes are multifaceted, the solutions have to be multifaceted as well, and I hope that our work on this issue will help address it for the public. It's very serious. Homelessness is another area of concern for us. Homeless people living in subways, living in subway stations, spending most of their days there. It's a disservice to riders and the public, and it's also a disservice to people who are homeless and in need of care and service. I ordered an investigation into the contract that the MTA has with a nonprofit organization that is paid a substantial amount of money every year to provide service to the homeless population. And so you can look forward to hearing from my office on that issue in the months to come. And I can tell you I personally spent several hours inspecting Penn Station on this issue, and it's very disturbing and upsetting on many levels to see homeless people in need of care right outside the offices of a nonprofit entity that's charged with and has a contract to provide them with service, and to see people searching for food in garbage cans right in Penn Station. And as for the MTA reorganization plan, my office will be monitoring the MTA's implementation of the plan. We want to see it implemented as efficiently and fairly as possible without impacting the quality of service throughout the system. And so it's a new day for the Office of the MTAIG. I'm so delighted that this is one of the first groups that I've had the chance to meet with publicly. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. I hope you visit our website and use it as a source to, of course, you can reach out to us directly, but you're also free to go on our website as a place for you to register your concerns, your complaints, and your feedback. So I'd be delighted to hear from you. If there are any concerns or questions you'd like me to take back to my office, I'd welcome them.
We will absolutely, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Carolyn. We will take questions now. Stuart.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So what would you say is the biggest challenge that you're facing inheriting this office? Is it staffing, cooperation? Share with us what some of your challenges are and how we may be of help, because remember, this is broader than the Transit Riders Council. You have representatives from Metro
Yes.
North and Long Island Railroad Councils as well. So I just throw that open.
I think one thing I wanted to address very early on was transparency, getting the word out that there is an MTA Inspector General. Many folks did not even seem to be aware of it, and I think it's very important that folks know there is an IG who's looking out for them, that there is a mechanism for riders, commuters, taxpayers, and workers to complain. They can do so anonymously to my office. They can do it online, by email, by phone. And so I would love your help in getting the word out that we exist and that we're here for you. I can tell you, with our new social media presence, we've seen complaints go through the roof. Complaints may be counterintuitive, but complaints are a good thing from my perspective. They're a source of information for my office. They're a source of ideas for investigations and for audits. And so I would say if there's one area where you could really be helpful to my office, it would be just getting the word out. The more information, the more complaints, the better for the work of my office. Thank you.
Edith?
Go ahead. I got you. Yeah, there have been quite a few quite a few stations without elevators where work has been done, where work is being done. For example, there are 15 elevators in Washington Heights that are not accessible. They go as far as a flight of stairs away from the platform. Those 15 elevators are being removed and replaced. We've had a whole list of other stations where work was done that did not include increasing Why am I getting feedback?
It's not you, it's the mics. I think somehow it's loud.
Okay,
I just moved it. Go ahead.
thank you. You know, like the ones on Central Park West and other locations in the city, there have been a number of stations where considerable work has been done without any improvement in accessibility. The MTA has often spoken about how they are exempt from the ADA, which seems to be suddenly a point in contention. We've got enough lawsuits going on to kill a cat. Where do you stand, if anything, in relation to these issues? I think that we have a continual problem. Look at this Zirkendorf issue. How many years did that escalator stay out? Excuse me?
Or an elevator.
Well, elevators stay a bit better about. But where, you know, we talk about the MTA growing a spine, whatever. There just really doesn't seem to be a lot of attention to the issue of these mobility equipment.
Okay, let's let her answer.
Well, accessibility is of vital importance, and I think as our work on the 2nd Avenue subway escalator shows, this is something that my office truly cares about, is devoting resources to. And so I don't want to speak about any particular elevator or escalator outage, although I would encourage the public to come and report specific areas of concern to us. And I can tell you that accessibility will be a major priority of my office. And of course, we typically look at it from the perspective of what is the MTA doing about it, what is their planning, what are the systems in place to make sure that they're staying on top of maintenance, what are they doing to engage with the contractors on these issues. And I recognize very well that accessibility is key to the ridership. It's key to safety. And so all I can tell you is this will be a very high priority for my office.
Chris?
As Edith already mentioned about accessibility, but there is one other issue, and Edith will
Yes.
vouch with me, is there are some stations do have an elevator, but you have as everyone calls it, the hump. Some areas of the hump is not leveled. Some of it is a little, if a wheelchair is trying to get on the train, they have to pray they can get a good speed. If not, they get stuck or they can fly off the chair. And we have mentioned this, there are some areas the hump does sink. Like, I'm going to use an example, Atlantic Avenue was a hump issue, like 34th Street Penn Station on the A and C and E, but Atlantic Avenue was fixed, glad to see that. But there was other stations on other lines in any borough having those issues. And I don't think they're checking those stations out thoroughly. Now, you mentioned escalators on the 2nd Avenue. Going down on the other end of the queue line, which I do live on, Brighton Beach is out, it works. It's out, it works. A lot of people, and I can already hear a lot of people back up behind me agree with me, the Brighton Beach escalator needs to be doing something about it because the mechanics have been there. I've seen it like every time I'm in Brighton Beach, trying to fix it, or it takes a week to fix, or a month, or sometimes I have to say a century. Something needs to be done with that station because a lot of people saying they're getting sick and tired of that escalator being out. So that's one station I can vouch on.
Thank you so much for bringing that to my attention.
Trudy?
You mentioned your work on dealing with the homeless, and especially what we've all heard about, that outside organization that has been paid so much and has done so little. But I'm wondering what, if any, your contact and their cooperation with the mayor's office on the homeless, and how you would, hope to make that better? Because from all I know, it hasn't been that great.
Well, our work and recognizing our role is mostly looking about systems. We aren't in a position to make recommendations and bring those recommendations to light, and groups like this can ask questions about whether the recommendations are adopted or not adopted. So what I would say is please stay tuned. We haven't put out our report yet on the issue. Our investigation in that is ongoing. But that's certainly something, the aspect of ensuring that there's good interagency cooperation and good agency cooperation with city officials as well as state officials. That's an important issue, and so we will certainly take that into consideration.
I guess what I'm asking is, does it go beyond recommendation, where if you see that there is not the level of cooperation that you desire, do you have any power to do something, or will you be going public on this, which is such a serious issue, not just on the subways, but all over?
Yes.
And I guess it goes into all of the areas that our group has. It's beyond the city, even though most of us are familiar, but for those of us who do go up to Westchester or Long Island or out, we see much more than has been in the past.
No, that is a great question. What can the Inspector General's office do? Our power really derives from our ability to report. That's why being transparent is so important, and putting out public reports and recommendations. But I am independent of the MTA, I'm independent of the board, I'm independent of the commissioner, and I don't manage the MTA. So we have a voice, and we have the ability to follow up and monitor and see whether our recommendations have been implemented or not. But we don't have the power to force the MTA to do it. So that's why it's important for our reports to be public and for folks to ask questions. And we can't be the only ones asking questions as to whether our recommendations have been implemented or not.
Lisa.
Thank you so much for coming today. I've got 10 questions, but I'm only going to ask one.
Okay.
I have to figure out which one. You talked about the MTA reorganization.
Yes.
And monitoring implementation, and that's certainly something that we're very interested in and have raised concerns about the lack of public input, public participation. You know, that the chairman sometimes points to the fact that he's met with advocacy and public organizations like ours, but we're calling for a larger scale public comment period, as is laid out in the agency's own public participation guide. So I'm wondering how, if there's a way to strongly encourage, based on the agency's own document, to get them to move toward public engagement, or how we might possibly be able to work together to to break down that barrier.
Well, we share as a core value transparency, so we're on the same page about the importance of that. And I'm hopeful that my office's role in reviewing and having some public reporting function will give the public confidence and information as to what's happening and when it is happening. So I'm very pleased that one of the board members at the last meeting asked if we would have that role, and that's one reason why I'm very happy to take that on. And obviously this is hugely important for the MTA, and so I hope that we can be an engine for the public and a voice for the public in that process.
Randy,
I'm pleased that you're here. Thank you for taking
Thank
time
you.
of your busy day. I just wanted to say, in the first 2 years I was on the board, I got nothing from the MTAIG, and I'm very pleased to see that you're sending reports out, keeping us up to date on it, and I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Stuart.
Just to pick up on one of the themes my colleagues were talking about, So it's a two-parter. So does your office undertake short-term reviews versus, let's say, a long-term study? Because maybe they're talking about individual elevator outages. It could be a contractor issue, or it could be a performance issue for the workers of the authorities. You look at both, right?
Yes, and one thing that my office is starting to do is something called flash reports, where if and when we can do something quickly and get in there and feel comfortable that we've gotten to the bottom of the issue, yes, we would, and we have put information out publicly.
So if there was a vendor then, or staff that weren't performing, what would you do with the information in terms of getting them to change their performance?
Well, as I mentioned, when there's an issue with whether it's a vendor or an employee, we have the power to put out a report or an audit, make recommendations, and I'm pleased to say we have a very good working relationship with the MTA, and they often follow our recommendations. So there is a lot of value to it. Yes.
Last part on that.
Sure.
So, and Lisa can fine-tune what I'm saying here. So there are different proposals about how vendors and contractors would be treated if they fail to perform in a certain
Yes.
way. Do you have a position on that you would care to share with us?
Can I want to
Or
thank you, because that
refine-
was one of my
refine-
other questions about the mandatory debarment regulations. We've expressed some concerns that they were, passed in the middle of the night, and what the effects might be on the limited number of contractors who will do work, the increasingly limited number of contractors who will and can do work with the MTA. And so if there are some of these particular contractors or vendors who are, as you're going through the responsibility hearings or you're doing your work, if you have a role in the debarment process, if there's any recourse, Stuart, am I capturing a little bit? Okay.
Well, my office is certainly in a position to provide technical expertise and guidance to the agency when dealing with different contractors, whether it's in the debarment process or otherwise. It's not really my office's role to express an opinion on a particular policy choice that the legislature has made, but my role, we do have a role in ensuring that the law is followed. And seeing how it's being implemented. Is it being implemented efficiently? What are the results of it? And that we do have a role to play.
Just the point on that. So let's say in the city service, they're checking, let's say, with the Department of Investigation to do a Vendex check on a vendor. So if you had information,
Yes.
regardless of the stage of your query, would they consult with you and ask you to weigh in, let's say, on something they're reviewing?
They do consult with our office about problems with different vendors. That's absolutely right, yes.
Let me ask a quick question.
Sure.
You mentioned you were looking at debris falling from elevated structures issue.
Yes.
Are you calling, or have you asked Transit to investigate and examine every mile of elevated track? I know it's largely been the number 7 line, but there, the Bronx is, every line but one is elevated,
Yes.
and we have other elevated lines in Brooklyn and Queens. And are you looking at the relationship between the rolling stock, whether it's heavy or vibrates more than other types, and any relation
Yes.
between those and the elevated structure?
What I will say is our review is ongoing, and with this and many issues, I don't want to get ahead of my team's work. It's really important for them to gather all of the data, and for me not to be premature in saying what our recommendations will be. So I will just reassure you that's an important issue. It's a safety issue, and so we will have more on that in the coming months.
Thank you.
So I know that we've only got time for 1 or 2 quick questions, so I don't know if there's anybody else at the
I
table.
just do a follow-up on your
well-
response to my question and Stuart's. I just want to clarify.
Yes.
You say that as you look into things, you will be then issuing reports. So 2-part. Are those reports going to be issued to the public, or are they going to be issued to the board in the hopes that the board will make it public? And will you then be doing follow-up on those reports afterwards? And will you be going public? I mean, I love the word transparency, but there are a lot of different degrees of transparency that can go on.
Yes.
So
Let that be the question, okay?
yeah.
Because we're really time limited.
No, I'm so glad you asked that. Let me be clear, we are putting all of our reports and investigations online, available to the public. I want as many people reading them as possible, and if you follow us on social media, you will know in real time when they go up. And then my office has had a terrific practice of going back to, we can't do it for every single report we've done. We have limited resources, but we strategically look at past reports and do follow-ups a few years later to say what has been done here, and then issue a follow-up report to say where things stand. And the second part of your question is, are we also telling the board? Yes, we're telling the board, and we're sending out emails directly to all of the board members, letting them know when reports are issued.
Thank you so much for your response.
Marisol, you'll be the last one.
I don't really have a question. As a group, have also created reports that I suggest you look into, because there's been some conflicts with what the MTA has reported versus what we've found. So if you can take those reports into consideration as you're reviewing the different issues. We did a station study, we've done performance levels. So that's just a suggestion that maybe you can look at what our reports were and just focus on those issues that you're looking to address.
Thank you so much, and I can tell you that from my staff's perspective, that is something they do, and they view your reports as a very valuable resource, and that was one reason I wanted to come visit you today, was to say thank you.
Can you just give your website address and all your social media information?
I may just ask my staff member to come up here and give it to you. But if you do go on the MTA IG website, you'll find the links for complaints.
We'll email, we will.
Yes.
Yeah, we have that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Let me thank you so much for this. It's wonderful. And please count on us as a resource to be
I
used
will.
as you see fit.
And I hope to be back. Take care.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's move into the chair's report. Have people received the chair's report?
Yes.
Okay, does anyone I don't have to read this, obviously, if you've all received it, so does anybody have any questions about this? You've seen the op-ed that we wrote about the possible service cuts. It was just flabbergasting to hear that. And you also know about the new L train shutdowns that are coming. There was also, is Mark around? Oh, well,
He's just in home.
okay, there's obviously going to be some Long Island Railroad impacts on the Mineola switch replacement. Add that to the continuing list of replacements of grade level crossings and everything, and the line between Floral Park and Hicksville has had quite a lot of work going on, that's for sure. Yes.
Well, this thing keeps on going on, Rob. Can I, first of all, and I think I speak for everyone here and others connected with the MTA, but thank you, and Mark, and who was the third one, and Ira, for writing that, Randy, Randy, not Ira. My God, my head's going way back. But to thank the three of you, okay, for writing that piece and getting it, and Lisa, I'm sure that Lisa's fine hand was in there also, because it was really, really good, and it also gave us some visibility. I know I got people contacting me since it did appear in print, but I'd like to know what kind of feedback, response, whatever, besides the one or two in the print paper, letters to the editor or whatever, and what kind of reaction you've been getting.
Sheila has been monitoring social media shortly after the op-ed ran, so Sheila could answer that question.
The feedback, the reaction to the op-ed of Lisa, Randy, Mark, and
Yeah.
Andrew.
Yeah, we got a lot of good feedback. A lot of people commented and retweeted us and agreed. Most people agreed. Everyone is against service cuts, and it was quite shocking and surprising for a lot of people. So I think it did pretty well, actually.
I would appreciate, and I don't know if anybody else wants, if you could put together maybe a compendium, not all of them, but just some lines that jumped out at you in terms of the response. I think, for me anyway, only because so many people have contacted me about it, and I'd really like to see the contact that you had too. So if we could do that, I don't know, Lisa, I'm not asking for every single response on the social media, but if it's not too much trouble to do.
Sure, absolutely. That's an excellent suggestion, and we're not done. We're particularly concerned also about the lack of a capital plan, which is something that you'll be talking about further. But the fact that the board is supposed to vote on that in 2 weeks, 10 days, 2.5 weeks, and nobody's seen it, and that there's no public involvement or any public anything in advance of the release and vote. And the tie-in between the capital plan and service cuts. You're asking for 40, 60, $50 billion, but then you're saying, oh, but we can't operate what we have. So we're going to continue that conversation in the media as well as with the MTA.
The best thing in doing that is that, and you know me as a media person, as a PR person, is that letting the public know that we exist by going public with something like that. So I just want to compliment you and everybody else in making that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Trudy. Let me just go in order. Edith?
I just have a question, slightly confused about Larry Schwartz's comment at the last meeting. I can't do it. It's like where they were going to look for the money that the state owes us. Mm-hmm. So now we have that money moving, but at the same time they're cutting. Do we really expect to get that money?
Well, it's the operating budget versus the capital budget.
Right.
And he was talking about the capital budget,
Right.
and along with Robert Mojica in making the list of the 50 elevator next accessible stations public, and then finding funds in the existing capital program, using the state money to pay for that. But your question really gets to the heart of the matter is, do we really expect this to happen if they can't operate what they have? And that's a question that lingers.
And there's also the issue of congestion pricing coming on, which will deter some people from driving and turn them over to public transit. Are you then talking about cutting service when you're going to try to put additional people there? The whole thing makes no sense. Also, the reorg is supposed to treat service as the sacred cow. You're doing all of this. You're consolidating IT, HR, procurement. You're consolidating all these things in order to save money and stop waste. And in the midst of that, don't you want to see how all of that turns out? Cutting service should be the very last thing that is ever done. It's if all else fails. And, right now, congestion pricing and other things are all dedicated to the capital fund, whereas nothing except for the fare box is dedicated to operating. And maybe we should be talking about some dedicated source of revenue. Also, they're going to be doing this large-scale fare evasion attack with additional folks in different places, which is obviously bleeding us. And I see fare evasion that I can't believe on a daily basis, all walks of life. And it's the thing to do now. I guess it's a badge of honor or something. So you've got to fix that before you even talk about cutting service, it seems to me. That's a never-ending spiral of death. You've seen it on bus cuts, and that would happen on railroad cuts. It would happen on subway and additional bus cuts. We don't want to go down this route at all. Again, exactly. We should have learned our lesson. Let me just, yes, Chris, sorry.
Related to the cuts.
Yeah.
You know, we're all talking about cuts. Do you have anything updating about it? Because
No.
the one confusion that everyone's saying is, in Brooklyn, I'm going to use the two buses, the 38 and the 54, which I don't think people are understanding. They're getting the longer buses. They think the buses got cut now. They're all looking around like, huh? How's these buses still running?
When you convert from a single-length bus to an Arctic,
Yeah.
there frequently is a lack of frequency, a drop in frequency, because you're adding seats.
Always, but,
Not adding wheelchairs,
yeah, well.
they're cutting wheelchairs.
Yeah, exactly, but the only thing is you're cutting the wheelchair part, which I know BCID agrees with me on that, but when they realize and they see the buses are running, they're like, oh, it's running normally. I'm like, yeah.
This hasn't happened, what they're talking about yet. That's why.
The problem is there's some minor issues that I think we should be getting an answer saying why you're saying cuts, because lately you're scaring half the community out.
Yeah, we've been asking.
Because I don't want to have to feel this problem almost becomes next year. It'll be 10 years of June.
So, in terms of the reorg, we are awaiting now the appointment of a chief operating officer and a chief transformation officer. Those two positions are the next, yes, transformation officer. That's the language in the, that will be someone who will oversee the reorg, basically.
Under the proposed, sorry, under the proposed organizational chart, the Chief Transformation Officer has a direct connection to the CEO. The CEO and the COO may have a direct connection to the board, or maybe not. But the agency presidents are under the Chief Transformation Officer, and everybody else is under the CEO. So we really don't know what it's going to look like. There's an implementation plan that has to be developed by October 15th, and then implementation begins. So part of the concern we've had is that nobody knows what any of this means, and the public should have an opportunity to weigh in. So there is an email address on the MTA's website where you can provide comments on the transformation plan. Now, the MTA board voted on a 38-page plan, and on July 24th. 1 week later, Alex Partners came out with their 158-page final plan, which included all the financial appendices and the definitions, essentially, of what what they were proposing. But there's, it's a lot of paper, a lot of words, and not necessarily a lot of meaning at this point.
And the way it was sold, Trudy, at the special meeting, board meeting, was it's a blueprint for how to move forward and can be subject to change. It's not clear how you would end up making any changes, but that's the way it was basically sold. It's a blueprint on how to move forward.
But you're hiring, or we are hiring this transformation person, even though to me, I mean, having experienced so much of the gobbledygook of the MTA over the years, this takes the cake. I mean, when I read about it, I said, I can't believe this. But maybe that just skipped this transformation officer person or whatever. But it just seems, and I don't know if anybody else around the table feels that way, but if there is an address, rather than us doing it as individuals, if we could make some kind of a comment just saying that we don't think this, I'll leave the verbiage up to you, but that basically it sucks. But we have to put it in much more diplomatic language than that.
You think?
Yeah, could we go on record about this?
Lisa, go ahead.
Oh, we're on record. We're on record. We've written letters. We've spoken in person. We're participating in press events. I participated on a panel conversation on August 22nd that was specifically looking at the transformation proposal. we, as a group of, a small, select group of advocates, had an opportunity to meet with Alex Partners in advance of the report development, and also when it was released, to ask questions, and Ronnie Hickam has committed to continuing those meetings, which is great, but is it just an opportunity for us to complain, or is there an opportunity for us to actually move the needle on the things that we want to?
Well, I guess what I'm suggesting is that all of us, as the PCAC, not just the TRC, which we've done before, signed by all of us.
This affects everybody, so it would be the three
So-
councils.
Exactly, and signed by all of us, or anybody who wants to sign on, and then going public with that letter so that it gets some media attention, because no matter what we've done, it hasn't gotten the kind of attention that it needs. I know some public officials have gone public but I think since we made our mark with that op-ed and with that ever, I would request and that you prepare a brief but cogent letter just saying that we think, well, again, in good language, not mine, that says, and requesting more information before, and specifically asking for the duties of this transformation person and why it was necessary to spend more money on somebody to tell us how to save money.
So a lot of that is spelled in the legislation that mandated this, transportation effort. So there were a couple of things that happened. As part of congestion pricing, their 10-point plan for transformation was born. And so we can ask questions, but it's mandated in the legislation. So now we're talking to legislators.
I don't think the hiring of another
Yes.
high-level
It
position
is. It's mandated
in the legislation
Yeah.
on congestion pricing.
Yes, and Jerry.
As far as I know, there was supposed to be a committee set up and a commission set up to do
That's a different.
all of that.
That's different.
That was from the legislature.
That's
Trudy, so you can see what's in it.
Okay, so you don't think that it would behoove us to send some kind of a letter just saying that we still don't have the
We
answers
can
that we want?
certainly ask for the definition of the responsibilities of the chief transformation officer and the chief operating officer and all of the new positions. We can certainly do that. But commenting on whether there should be one, that's done. That's legislated.
Okay, then can we do that then? However you think would make the most impact.
We will talk about that, what
If
the best way
we
to go
could,
forward.
I mean, if everybody around this table agrees, if people, because I think it has to come from all of
We will
us.
continue to speak out about this. Jerry?
Yeah, just one question. How long is this transformation supposed to take place? And will the term of this transformation officer concur with that? Is it 3 years, 5 years for the MTA to complete their transformation?
It's ongoing. There's a whole new office that's being built around the chief transformation officer.
No, what
They're
I'm saying
actually-
is
right.
there a time frame for the MTA transformation? Do they have a goal that we're gonna be transformed in 5 years, 10 years?
It's about 5 years according to the
years?
timetable that they've put forth as part of the Alex Partners plan.
Okay.
So there are some things that start immediately. In fact, they're already hiring the team for the chief transformation office before they've hired the chief transformation officer. So, which is an interesting way to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
But there are different timelines within the first 6 months. Some of the implementation will have already been completed. For example, the onboarding of the revamped capital construction or development team is already happening because it was underway. It's already in process. So as has been described to us as in our meetings and as at the board meeting was that some of the processes and process changes are already in place. They've changed the reporting structure within capital construction and some of the responsibilities and the outliers. So some of it's happening right in real time right now, but we can also get you the timeline for implementation in general.
Well, I guess what I was trying to get at is, this is going to be a high salaried person, and in a perfect world, hopefully he'll go away or she'll go away in 5 years or 6 years. That's what I'm getting at.
And Jerry, you can already see that the change is happening. In yesterday's announcement of additional L-train closures for ADA installations, it was Jano Lieber and Jano Lieber alone that made that announcement. Andy Byford was nowhere to be seen.
Yeah.
He did have a press conference about that lunatic that went after one of the bus drivers and got into a speeding cab and then beat the bus and held him up and said, "You didn't pick me up." But he is around. But we would like Long Island Railroad and Metro North Commuter Council chairs to give a brief report each.
The report was sent out.
We should probably do it in alphabet. Okay. We normally do. So LIRR is first.
I think I speak for both of us. It's saying, our reports were sent out, and we'll take any questions. But can I make one comment on what we were just talking about? On the transformation, as far as what our issue is on our council, and what I've spoken about to the railroad, is my concern is not so much all these titles and everything, which is an issue. My issue is the folding in of the communications into the MTA. I'm not sure what that means as far as our relationship with each individual agency. Because what I can foresee is them saying, something happens, say, "Oh, that's the MTA. It's all the MTA. It's the MTA." Some person behind the curtain who we have no direct contact with versus the head of an agency. Right now, we deal with the head of an agency, and they're liable, they have to talk to us, they have to deal with us. I'm concerned there's going to be a kick-up as to, well, that's an MTA, it's that press release went out by the MTA, that issue was an MTA, and we're not involved. And so that's been my concern. I haven't gotten anybody to tell me it's not a concern. So I think we should be focusing on what affects us and our advocacy to riders versus other issues that I think may be beyond what we need to deal with every day. So it's an issue I've been concerned with. I brought it forward. I don't know if anybody agrees with me or disagrees with me, but I'm already
It's a
seeing
major
that.
issue.
I'm already seeing it happen.
We all agree.
That's
And
something we should focus on.
something that's an offshoot of what you're speaking about is some of the duties of the agency presidents are being given to a different piece. So in order to do away with silos, we're creating new silos, as Lisa so aptly put it.
And that's part of what I'm saying is that,
Yes.
but we have to watch, because our mandates generally legislatively is that those agencies have to deal with us, have to respond to us. Individually, I don't think our councils have, MTA has to. So we need to really be on top of this, whether it's even transforming our legislative mandate in the legislature to include it. But I just think that this is the issues we need to focus, I think, instead of the big issues, focus on what our hands are involved in and not let lose sight of that in the bigger fight.
So again, if there are any questions in my report,
Randy, there's been, as well as my complaint, as well as in the past, there's been complaints of accessibility going on. People who are trying to get on the train, asking an ambassador to insist them on the train to let the conductor know that there is a wheelchair. Also, trying to get on the train, there's been a lot of complaints, especially one complaint I know we put in. I did not hear anything back.
did you get his complaint?
Yes, I did. I
No,
did
there's
send
no-
it. I did send it to you guys. That was since I think it was when I think it was in May or June. You guys said you would get. I think it was in June. I mentioned it, and then you said you guys would get back to me in possibly a few months because it takes time.
It shouldn't take time.
All I know is, and I'm looking on the website. I have not seen any assistance with accessibility. I know, in fact, I heard that someone got hurt on a train. Someone I know who works for OPWDD has been having the same problems getting on a train and asked for assistance, and the conductors are nowhere in sight to get off on the lines. This is definitely going to Connecticut. All the 3 lines all together having these issues. And I'm just getting an email just popping in now, which I can't give the name because I don't have permission by HIPAA law.
So, Chris, we will look into the one in May. I don't recall having seen that. People need to report these
They do.
issues. I don't know who they report them to. But I don't know who they're being reported to. When we met with Kathy Rinaldi, we suggested that there be a dedicated accessibility officer for Metro North, as there is for the Long Island Railroad, and she seemed very receptive to that. But if there are specific instances, we need people to provide us with the car number, the time, the location, all of.
You don't have to.
I know, but we're not getting that, so. Okay, so so ask people, just either share that information with you, Deborah can send you the form that includes all the information, and you can share it out and about, because that's what, we can't resolve things unless we have the information.
I understand what you're saying, Lisa, and I agree what you're saying, is that I did tell them this, but as I told them to, without a car number, a station name, anything you say, I did. It's like, some of them feel like,
You could also just use the time of the train went out of wherever.
yeah, that's what I was just gonna say.
But there's a considerable problem. My favorite thing is just not knowing where the hell you are because the announcements aren't being done, because the strip does not have any information. And it's a particular problem on the weekends because they just don't do it on the weekends, and there are fewer people who know where we are on the train on the weekends. It's not like you've got the commuter cohort, who if you're on like a Monday morning, you can say, where are we? And the person next to you knows where we are. That's a particular problem.
Glad she's not driving trains.
Excuse me?
I'm glad you're not driving trains.
Actually, this is not the solution to your problem, but believe it or not, on the My MTA, on the My Long Island Railroad app and on the My Metro North app, you can see exactly where every train is.
Not everyone has that.
It's
Not
true.
everyone cares.
I said it wasn't a solution to your problem,
Right.
but it does
Just
exist.
like, where the
If
hell
your train
are
is
we?
late and you're trying to make a connecting train, you don't know, it doesn't show you if you're gonna make it, or,
Exactly.
there's a lot to be kinks to still be worked out on those systems. And
And-
I'm hoping that the Long Island Railroad and Metro North will work together to improve them into a single seamless app, but
Well,
that has not yet
To
happened.
Mark's earlier point, one of the things that they are combining among all three operating agencies is communications, hopefully to make things more standard, so the same kind of alerts that are on one will be on the other. Whether that works out and whether they keep the agencies notified of what they're doing, hopefully they will, but it remains to be seen how all of this is going to work.
Just to add for the record, I did mention to people to bring those complaints. If they don't, that's out of my hands. But there was only one complaint, which I'm not saying the person's name, has put the complaint in, and we did put that in the complaint to, between Grand Central and Connecticut.
You often say you're not going to give the person's name. Are you in the witness protection program or something?
I don't have permission to ask, can I use her
Okay.
name? I am following the HIPAA law.
Okay.
All right, so what else?
Go ahead, Randy.
So although the report that was given to you is mainly focused on west of Hudson, I do tell you I ride all the lines. I've been over the entire Metro North, and I'm in the process of recompleting all of the Long Island Railroad lines. When I'm out there, I identify myself to the crews I interact with. I speak to them, they give me suggestions, and I pass the suggestions on to management. One of the people who attends our meetings sent me a picture of the other night of a track at 110th on the number 1, and there was water there, and the comment came that this has been there for several weeks. So I had the thing, it was in the evening, I said, well, I really hate to send emails to staff. I can do it, but I hate to send emails to staff in the off hours, but you know what? Maybe just tonight someone is in that area and will have missed the opportunity, so I sent it to Andy and to Sally Labrera. She responded right away, we'll look into it. And then the next day, yesterday morning came the answer that this happens when the crews are cleaning stations and there is no drain there. They did remove the area, they removed the water and they cleaned up the area, but they now have to look into how they can avoid this happening in the past. They have to come with a solution that will take care of the water since there's no drain there.
They probably found your email refreshing because they probably said to each other, wow, at least it isn't Andrew again. Yeah. All right, so we have a few items of business that we need to tend to, one of which is meeting times and locations for these meetings. We did some outreach, obviously, since we received comments that this wasn't the most convenient time and/or place for some folks. We do. It's a shame is we only have 22 as a whole because we can't get appointments.
Working on it.
Yeah, we're working on it. Lisa, do you want to speak to this? Because we did get some trending opinions, but no definitive opinions. So.
Thank you. So we did get some reasonable feedback, not as much as we would have necessarily liked from everybody who's expressed concern. So regarding the time, we had 5 people who wanted to keep the meetings at this time, and 5 people who wanted to move them to 4:30 in the afternoon. The majority of people wanted to keep the meetings on Thursdays, and the majority of people were interested in meeting in Midtown near Penn Station. So, the question then comes to, is it confusing to alternate? Is that something we want to consider? I know. So wait, this is, we've asked everybody to weigh in. It's primarily from the other councils who have a difficult time coming during the day because they either don't work downtown or they work in Midtown. Or they work, they can't get out for an hour and a half block or so in the middle of the day. So, or they work in White Plains. So, I don't know that we're going to solve this, except that we want to try rotating a location for the next meeting. So that is not my decision.
If the times were 4:30, does that mean you're providing dinner instead of lunch?
Breakfast for lunch, or cookies, which is what we do at the LIRCC. We'll get a variety of...
Any opinions on this from folks around the table? Oren?
Coming here is most convenient, but starting at 12 is a problem for me. Getting down here by Metro North and the bus service across the Hudson River, it just doesn't work out. A half hour later is fine.
If we're not going to solve it today, you sent out multiple options, and it sounds like you've gotten down to maybe 2. Maybe we need to send it out to everyone saying these are the 2 options, and then we can then get between the 2 instead of people who may have voted for something else. Now, like anything else, it's a runoff, and now it's down to the final.
We can have ranked voting, since that's coming to New York, and particularly for the people who aren't able to be at the meetings, who consistently respond that they can never attend a meeting unless we change the time, because we do get those. Right, Edith?
Going to alternate. You mean alternating the times or locations? I can tell you that we had terrible luck alternating locations because no one ever remembered where we were for a meeting. Alternating times is a problem. It means having 2 blocks of time in your calendar for one event. And that's the problem. I just don't have the time in my calendar.
I'm not sure how that works, because it's one time for one meeting and one time for another meeting, so it wouldn't be
3 months apart.
at 3 months apart.
Okay.
So you have advance notice well in advance, obviously. That's what advance notice means. Which time and which location. So you wouldn't have to block off both.
In the grand scheme of things, I have certain things that are Monday, Tuesday, whether it's 3 months apart or 6 months apart. That's a block of time. So like on Thursdays, I have 5 different meetings over the month that are on Thursday. So if you decide to move a block, you may be moving into something that I already have. And I'd be forced to have to choose, and it's not going to work, personally.
Well, the block of time is the same, it's just a location.
No, it's not, because we're talking about
We're gonna, so I
12?
think Ed Mark suggested we'll send it back out.
4:30.
To see, no, we'll get clarification. Mark, why don't you?
Yeah, just to say, listen, this time, location is easier for me now, but when a lot of our members came on, if you remember, it was Midtown where we used to meet. A lot of them can't come downtown for their, the bosses won't let them out for that. So that's how the issue came up, that they're missing all the meetings, and our council doesn't really have representation at these meetings, so they were concerned. They felt that they're not doing what they need to do as a member to be here. So that's all this is about. It's about, and if it doesn't work for the majority, then it doesn't work. But I just think they should be heard, and they should be able to give another, between the two, and however it works. But at least we've heard their plea, and we're going to respond to it, and we're going to. That's all it really is. Not about, it's not like they don't want to come. It's just that it was changed. The location was changed.
The time or the location.
Not changing anything yet.
Right.
Okay, I mean, for example.
Well, the location did, just understand the location did change from when they became
Yes.
members. Now it's
Okay,
here.
but I will say that the Madison was the worst location for me, because I have to go around and about. This is, the only problem with getting here is having to be dependent on the one from the uptown end. I mean, but I travel at least an hour and 25 minutes to get here. Yeah.
I'm comfortable with the current location and the time, but just a crazy suggestion. Since we're all volunteers, did anybody ever consider, and this only occurs 4 times a year, we have quarterly meetings, did we ever consider a weekend? I said it was a crazy idea, but remember, it's only 4 times a year.
Maybe a retreat? Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Marisol, did you have your hand up?
What is it that we're considering? The change of location or the change of time? Or do we do them independently? That's what I want to know. Because if it's the issue with the location, then we just have to figure out what the location might be. If it's an issue with the time, then that's a different story. So for me, it's confusing because you're asking me not only to change the location, you're also asking me to change the time. For me, it doesn't matter. You ask me where I got to go, and I'll try to be there. But my thing is that I'm confused as to what it is that we're being asked to do.
The next communication will make that very clear.
Okay.
This gentleman's had his hand up for quite a while. And then Chris.
Chris. I missed old business. I stepped out for a second. Oh, I'll wait. Well, Andrew, you mentioned fair beating for a couple of seconds, and again, I'm going to recommend, particularly to the entire council, that we invite the chief of the MTA police to the next meeting of PCAC, Owen Monahan. And we had the chief of the transit police. I'm talking about the MTA police. His name is Owen Monahan, and he's the chief of the MTA police. And in addition to discussing fair beating, the MTA police have created a new unit called the Hybrid Threat Unit. And I think it would be helpful to understand why they did it and what the hybrid threat is.
Great idea. We will look into it. Okay.
You said I was next. Old business.
Still old? Okay.
Yeah.
Then we're moving.
Andrew, regarding the location, we got to make sure it's on the record that it has to be accessibility.
I'm sorry, that's not even a consideration. Of course it will be. Okay?
Did you really think we would pursue a place that
I
wasn't?
just, excuse me, you said Penn Station. Penn Station location
Penn Station
is
area.
some areas are still in construction and some areas are not 100% accessible.
And we know those.
I'm
Chris.
not saying
We
that-
know those.
I'm just saying that we need to keep it open.
And Edith, you're right, and we did call all of the restaurants that we looked at and ask the question, and now we know to be more specific about the questions that we ask. So thank you for reminding us of that.
Okay, let's go to new business. Trudy.
I know this is going to sound strange, but I had called the office about, not with a complaint, I'm not doing any more complaints because I know the answers I always get back from whatever it is. But I have 2 compliments which I wanted to make. One dealing, and Randy, this, I don't know if this goes to you or how or who at Metro North, but it has to do with the manager of the Metro North customer service window at Grand Central Station, which I thought was something, and she, after my getting the runaround so that it was going to be a complaint about how to get a refund on an unused round-trip ticket, this woman could not have been nicer, more helpful, and I didn't identify myself, that I had any connection to the MTA or Metro North or anything else until after it was over, and I said, I want to put in a compliment for you. And she said, nobody's ever done that before. And then I discovered I don't know how to put in a compliment for somebody and especially with Metro North. So that's my first question. The second is, I also want to do a compliment for, which we've all had trouble with, but with a 511 operator who was very helpful in giving me information about something that I didn't even know existed, the BXM1 bus, which stops on, I have a friend who has recently been moved up to Riverdale, and that's the only way she can get into the city. And I discovered that the going back bus is literally on my corner on 78th and 3rd, and that going down, it's supposed to stop, I thought, at 79th and Lex, but there was no signage there. And I finally got hold of this. I called 511. She checked it out. She took all the time to check out why there wasn't signage there, that it was stopping there, everything else, and that she was even going to put in some kind of a report.
So you wanted to do a compliment?
And I want to compliment Ms. Mayweather, who was so nice on the phone. I mean, it's rare that within a 2-week period or 3-week period, I have 2 compliments.
We can do that. We can do that.
So should I do it through you? I'll give Deborah, then I'll give Deborah, because
Yes.
Deborah wasn't
Give it to
sure,
Deborah.
how we do this. So when we're over, I'll give her the information. But is that, so compliments also will go through our office for Metro North, for everything?
Absolutely.
Okay, I just, for the record.
Yes.
It also is on the main page of the MTA website.
I do these things verbally.
Okay.
I'm a Luddite. I'm sorry. Okay.
Let's get the next item of new business. Anybody here? Otherwise, we will go to the public. Please, you have something new business?
Oh, what we have on the agenda as new business is the
Well,
Alex
there's just one over
Partners
there.
report.
Matt, go ahead.
Can I step up, or, I don't really need the mic.
No, you do, Matt. Yes, you do.
Issue is that on the M79 bus on East End Avenue, the construction it's the worst thing in the world because there are rocks there, the bus stop's been moved, the M79 route sign is not there, and it's a definite problem.
Let me speak to that, the response to that, if I may. There is a
Quickly.
lot of construction going on, private construction going on in the area of 79th Street. It is something that the whole community is up in arms. There's also a lot of construction on Lexington Avenue, 3rd Avenue, circa 79th Street. Signs, bus stops keep on being moved. They're supposed to put up the signage. The contractor is responsible to, we've checked into this. Matt, believe me, I live right there. It is horrendous, and there is nothing that we or it want. This is something that the MTA isn't responsible for, and even DOT can't keep up with it. So that's the response. You don't have to. I mean, if you want to and put in a question,
As long as
but I'm
there's
telling you,
signage there to indicate where the bus will be.
yeah, but the signage is the complaints go in all the time because it's moved from one corner to the other corner. By the time they put the signage up, it's moved back to a third corner. And it's horrendous. That's all I can say. And I and other people in the community are on top of it, I can assure you, but it's...
Okay, thank you. Lisa, do you want to give your report?
Sure. I sent this out just a short while ago, so I apologize if you didn't have an opportunity to look at it. I have some hard copies with me as well. I guess my most earth-shattering news is that it's been almost a year since I got here, and I'm really thrilled. So thank you all for all of your support and for everything. I don't know necessarily need to go into all the details that you'll find in here, but we have been really busy over the last few months. We've got working with the councils, and also working internally with MTA folks on the Queens and Bronx bus redesigns. We've just been informed that we'll be invited to a meeting that we requested as part of the next phase of Queens bus redesign happens. You know, we're talking to people about what some of their issues and concerns are, not just because two of us live in Queens. Although that does help, you know, with understanding what some of the service issues are. But we've also been meeting with elected officials in the borough to talk about some of what they're hearing and their concerns and complaints. So we have also asked for a table as part of the next phase of the outreach efforts for the bus redesign, and have been told that will happen. And so we're going to ask for volunteers. So stay tuned. That's not for a little while. We've been attending every board meeting and every committee meeting and providing testimony at least on every day, and sometimes in 2 to 3 times a day. And we do try to get that out. We've got Bradley and Sheila both developed blog posts out of their testimony from the last regularly scheduled board meeting, which is on our website, on the PCAC website. You can find all of the testimony and the blog posts on the website. And I know that one of the things that we need to do better is to push those out to everybody, and we will do that. We've been closely working with other advocacy organizations, in particular with Tri-State Transportation, with Reinvent Albany, with Transit Center, with Riders Alliance, with Strap Hangers, to really look at the big picture issues and see how we can collectively make our louder voice to address some of the outstanding issues, particularly relating to not just the service cuts, which we've done individually and collectively, the capital plan, the call for transparency, the Alex Partners report. We were among a small group that was invited in to meet with MTA leadership to talk about the transformation plan, advocating for improved accessibility and the release of the Stantec report and the funds for the 50 stations. You've got in your reports the efforts that are happening outside of the New York City area that Mark and Randy are undertaking as well, too, with both elected officials and with other organizations. We did meet with the Bronx Borough President. Thank you, Marisol. We met with Assemblywoman Rosick and Senator Comrie to talk about the Outer Borough Transit Fund and what that means, particularly in the context of congestion pricing, because all we basically know is what we saw in a press release, that there's this $50 million fund that goes towards outer borough transit and also capital funds, capital projects that are related to that service. So we're really trying to figure out what that all means, but we've been assured that thank you. I heard you in my head. Assured that none of that those changes are going to take place until at least next year. So as we have those conversations, we talk about the importance of considering capacity, particularly until East Side access is completed, and Penn access moves, that shuffle happens, and then there's change in commuter patterns, particularly given the closures of the East River tunnels. So there are a lot of moving parts there, and we want to make sure that everybody who is essentially asking for something as part of this fund and as part of congestion pricing understands what the larger picture is, and how, it's great to offer everybody in Queens a discount on the Long Island Railroad, but that's realistically not possible because people are going to be displaced. So those are conversations, while there are concerns that people will be displaced until the other pieces move around. Sheila and Ellen have been continuing to work on the sexual assault report and recommendations. It's a very fragmented process to report an assault, and we know, based on unfortunate personal experience, that there are a lot of changes that can be made to improve that process. Last night I happened to run into the Bronx District Attorney, and we'll be following up to see what their, what the processes are. I spoke with a friend in the Queens DA's office about how to make it a cohesive process across all of the boroughs, and to make sure that the reporting within the MTA is also reflected, and that the categories of assault are appropriate and updated as necessary. We were thrilled that our intern, Uday Schultz, and some of you on TRC had the opportunity to see a presentation that he did on de-interlining and route simplification. His work caught the eye of Andy Byford and Sally Librera. We had an opportunity on Uday's last day to meet with them to talk about the work that he'd been doing and some of the recommendations. And Bradley was really working very closely with him and Ellen and shepherding that. So he is now off to what I believe some newspaper of record said is the #1 university in the country, and is beginning classes there. So we're really thrilled. Harvard. As I mentioned, was asked to participate in a transit center panel entitled "Can Riders Trust the MTA Reorganization?" along with former Transport for London executive Leon Daniels, Reinvent Albany senior analyst Rachel Faust, and Buzz Paswell, who some of you know as a City College professor, but was also headed up CTA in Chicago. It was a really great meeting and conversation with interesting questions. We've included in the report, which again was emailed to you, some lists of a sampling of some of the media in which PCAC and all of the chairs have been included, so that you have an idea of some of this smattering. And as a result of a lot of the effort and outreach and combined real push to get out there, we've seen some great results on our social media. We saw big increases in our online presence on our website in a year. We have 91.9% of our visitors are new visitors, which is terrific. In the last 90 days, our top 5 hits were on About PCAC, Contact Us, PCAC staff, our Debarment letter, which I referenced earlier, and our blog. On Twitter, over the past 3 months alone, we gained 51 new followers, and have a total of close to 400. So that's steps in the right direction. Next year, when I report on that, I'd like to add zeros after all of that. So, I honestly think that we're in a good position to do that. So thanks to our social media maven, Sheila, and to everybody who stays on top of this. I just wanted to, unfortunately, end on a somber note. Ellen's mom passed away last week. And we're all really very sorry and sad to hear about that, and offer you our condolences to you and your family. So that's the nutshell of my report, and I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Chris?
Lisa, I have to say, your report is always, I'm reading it like the whole time when everyone's doing everyone else's questions. I have to say, since you've been here, there has been a lot of things I'm seeing getting done, and I do want to compliment on the staff, because the website, I'm getting people calling me and saying, I can find more things on this website than the MTA website. And I can
I
tell
would
you,
say which MTA website, because there's two.
that's why I was waiting for you to say that, Lisa. That's why I was waiting for Andrew to say that. He's too quiet over there. But the main thing is, on the old MTA, between my MTA, either way, at least it's showing what's going on with the community, and also with Facebook and Instagram and all that jazz. It's at least they're seeing what they can do. And I think the piece will work on more future things, projects to come up. There is a lot of compliment about the 100 days and 100 nights. And it's been used a little bit more on the accessibility end, too, especially travel training.
Thank you,
Bradley.
Chris. Anybody have any further comments or questions or issues to raise? Seeing none, can we have a move to adjourn? I think that's unanimous. Thank you all.
Right, next meeting,
December 5th is our next meeting.
And we'll see about Owen Monaghan.
And everyone, please vote on the meeting dates and times,
Right, when we-
because not everyone voted last time. So please vote. And chairs, tell your members to vote.